dismissed with prejudice, depending on the severity of the bias. But in this case, we got two named individuals, Page and Strzok. We know who they are. We know what they've done, all of the things that you've mentioned. But there are also three other unnamed biased people based on your investigation, one lawyer and two other FBI agents. What are their names?
So as I mentioned earlier, Congressman, the request has come in from the committee to give their names. We went to the FBI. The FBI raised a concern because they work on counterintelligence matters, and we are working with the committee to try and get the information you've asked for to the
So the
committee.
FBI does not want their names released.
Correct.
And so the FBI makes the decision as to who those other three biased people are, and they say, we're not telling you because of some other internal reason on what they also work on, counterintelligence, which, whatever that means to whoever's hearing it. So my point is, we let the FBI determine not to tell us who the other three biased people were in this 500-page investigation that we all now have. Does that seem a little odd to you? I'm just asking your opinion.
Yeah, no, and there's a legitimate request, reasonable request from the committee, and I don't think it is a final decision at this point from the FBI, or, in my view, a final decision. It's something I'm looking forward to working with the committee to try and get the answers to, because I completely understand what the interest is of the committee in getting that information.
Well, it just seems to me that in the name of fairness, we ought to know the names of those three people who you determined were biased in this investigation that has taken place, this 18th-month investigation that you have been working on. I think that's fairness, and I think the American public would like to know who they are. I think in this issue, changing gears a little bit to Comey, he has done a great disservice to the reputation of the FBI. I mean, when FBI agents would walk in my courtroom back in Texas, you know, the jury wanted to stand up and say the pledge because they just trusted what they were going to say. I think now those days are over because the investigation must not only be fair, it has to look fair, and it no longer looks fair as to what the FBI is doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Texas yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many years have you known Jim Comey?
He was in the U.S. Attorney's Office when I started in 1991 there. So sometime after I started in 1991, I obviously...
How many years do you think y'all worked in the same area? 8 years, 10 years?
No. He left, I think, within a year or two of my arriving to come down to Virginia to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office there. I'd have to go back and try.
And then in your position at Justice, he was at FBI, so you had...
When I became IG, a year later, he became the FBI director.
Okay. So you've known him long enough to have an idea about what his reputation for truth and veracity was among other members of his, the Justice Department and the FBI. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what was his reputation for truth and veracity?
He had a very strong reputation.
In your report, do you ever say at any point that Jim Comey lied?
We do not.
Do you know of any time when Jim Comey has lied?
I can't think of any as I sit here.
So when President Trump said there's not a person who's told more lies in the world than Jim Comey, you would disagree with that?
I'm not going to answer what other people's views are or think. I can only speak to what my interactions with him were.
Thank
my
you.
capacities.
I know that your report basically said that Jim Comey was exceedingly careless in coming forward before the election with his reportage of the renewal of the investigation of Hillary Clinton and the laptop and Anthony Weiner. But there was no malicious intent. Is that accurate?
As to Mr. Comey, we didn't find any malicious intent.
And what he did could have possibly affected the election. You don't know that it did or didn't,
no
but it
idea.
could have. But it could have. And he also could have gone into the Trump-Russia investigation, which could have affected the investigation, and he didn't. Is that correct?
When you say go into, I'm sorry.
He could have let the public know that there was such an
The
investigation.
only thing I would say is he did not do that, which
Right.
was consistent with policy.
Some of the attacks were made on your decision not to prosecute, or the Justice Department's decision not to prosecute Secretary Clinton, and they stem from the Justice Department and the FBI's interpretation of the legal statute in term gross negligence. The Justice Department and FBI interpreted the statute to require deliberate intent, and they agreed there was simply no evidence in the Clinton case. And your report examined this and stated, we found this interpretation of Section 793 F was consistent with the Department's historical approach in prior cases under different leadership, including the 2008 decision not to prosecute former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales for mishandling classified documents. Mr. Horowitz, did you find the Department's prosecutors investigating Secretary Clinton considered both the case law and the Department's previous decision to decline the prosecution of Mr. Gonzales?
Yes.
Can you explain to us a little bit about the decision not to prosecute Alberto Gonzales and how that was similar to or parallel to Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think the issue there, and I'd have to go back and refresh myself on the Gonzales case, but it was the fact that it wasn't being sent to a third party who, or classified information was being provided to a third party, and some of the other factors overlapped with the factors in this matter, according to the prosecutor's assessment.
The FBI has been referred to in somewhat disparaging terms since this report. Did your report find that the rank and file of the FBI were at all guilty of bias?
No, not at all. In fact, as we lay out in the conclusion here, they've worked hard to create a strong reputation, and as we know, conduct like this creates such harm to that reputation that's been built up that's why it's in part so important to address and to avoid having this kind of activity occur.
Mr. Chairman Gowdy, my friend, said that the confidence in our system of law enforcement and public prosecutions is important to confidence in our government and the rule of law, and I agree with him. Would a statement to say that the FBI was a den of thieves contribute to the soured climate that we have in this country towards law enforcement and the rule of law?
You know, Congressman, I'm going to stick to what we've concluded in our report, and others can assess what they think this
Is there a
conduct
den of
means.
thieves at the FBI?
We in this investigation or any others we've done, we've not identified a den of thieves.
I thank you for your service and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Tennessee yields back. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Good afternoon.